I'm Bryan Bland. I'm Head of Corporate Partnerships and Events at the RSPB. The RSPB is Europe's largest conservation organisation, existing to save nature. My role is to raise money from businesses and corporates to fund the RSPB's conservation work. My favourite subjects at school were geography and history, and actually graphics. But the two that were most influential for me were geography and history, both of which taught me about people and how interesting and fascinating people and what they do are. And I think when I look back at my education, geography and history were the most inspiring subjects to really make me think and get interested about the world around me, and begin to ask questions about what I might do as a career that would fulfil me, challenge me and excite me, as well as interest me, because you spend a lot of time at work and there's no point not doing any of those things. I find I'm best when I'm challenged. So for me, being bored is not a good thing. In fact, my experience is if I'm bored, I'm actually disruptive. So I find that being challenged is the best thing for me. And my education actually led me to that conclusion. So I was always best when I was involved in the lesson, where I could actually feel I was contributing. So the worst thing for me personally was to be told to copy out paragraph 3 from page 119. It was much better for me to have a conversation and activity that allowed me to always use my brain, always ask questions and always listen to the answers, and often take part in finding what the solution was. So when thinking about a career, that's led me down the path of wanting to interact with people as opposed to processes, and wanting to understand how business works to achieve aims and goals as opposed to being buried in spreadsheets. So working at the RSPB, raising money from businesses and corporates, is quite challenging. But what's intriguing about it, and what fascinates me and what motivates me, is the challenge within that. So businesses have to make a lot of decisions about what they're going to do, who they're going to target, and what they're going to sell, and also whether they exist to either make money or just break even. Some businesses only exist to break even. So what motivates me every day is talking to businesses, understanding what their objectives are, and then how the RSPB and the conservation work it does can actually help solve some of their issues, some of their problems. Some of their issues might be around maintaining brand positioning, or getting a competitive advantage, or even growing their share of the marketplace. And sometimes working with charities can actually help position them in that way and solve those issues that they're facing. So for me, understanding those and finding out that information is critical to getting them to fund RSPB's work. So I'd say the skill I have to do that is to really be inquisitive, to ask lots of questions and try and understand what makes a business tick, what its problems are, what its challenges are, where it wants to be next year, the year after, and 5 years after that. Because without knowing that, you can't get them to adopt your ideas, you can't get them to go with your principles, and you can't get them to effectively buy from you, effectively buy the funding of your charity work in a way that they can use it. And they might be using that for corporate social responsibility purposes, they might be using it for marketing purposes. And yet again, understanding how they want to use it also helps you assess the value of what they want to do, what they want to buy, and also the amount of money you might be able to ask them, which obviously leads you to the amount of the type of project you ask them to fund, which fits in with where they are as an organisation, so that you have a marriage of minds. And to me, that's a fascinating process, which when I think back to my educational career, is one that was instilled for me at an early age. And that's being really fascinated about how things work, what makes them tick, and what sits behind decisions. A typical day for me is quite polarised. So on one side, I have the RSPB, an organisation that spends around £100 million a year on conservation delivery. And I need to understand that. I need to understand what those projects are, why they're important, what impact they're going to have, and why they really matter. Some of those matter for species, for wildlife, some of those matter for habitats, for landscapes and for special places. But a lot of those, and almost all of them, have an impact on people. And more often than not, that people story is the one that you can most commonly pitch to businesses, to get businesses involved with. Humans in nature, I like to call it. But that's what they enjoy. That's the message they want to hear. More often than not, they want to give back to communities and society. So on one hand, I have that work where I need to understand what the RSPB is doing and why, and what impact it's going to have, and more importantly, what it's going to cost and how we can demonstrate that. And on the other side, I have to have my other foot firmly out of the RSPB in the business world, understanding what trends there are out there, what's making people tick, what trends there are in fashion, advertising and marketing that make people think, hey, what I really need to do is put back into the community or put back into society. Then I have to join the two together. And that's the trick of the work, joining the two together to understand what businesses want to achieve and what the RSPB is doing to complete its mission. If you're thinking of a varied career that's not only going to reward you because you're giving back, but also give you a dynamic environment to work in, the charity sector is one you shouldn't discount. Because at the end of the day, it's often much more varied and much more challenging than the corporate sector, where more often than not you can find yourself involved with just one singular product, service, or one corporation. If you're thinking of coming into either a marketing role or a sales role or an advertising or media role, don't discount the charity sector as somewhere that can help you. Obviously, there are many degrees in those areas that you could look for, but also the thing that will give you the edge is volunteering. And for me, that's where the charity sector can really help. So if you can get an edge in your CV by volunteering whilst you're studying, you'll probably find the best place to get that is in the charity sector. So you might only think of the charity sector as delivering for its cause, but when you look at blue chip charities, they have large marketing departments, they have PR and media teams, and they also have fundraising teams. If you can get some volunteering experience in those kind of functions, the functions people don't traditionally think of as skilled areas in the charity sector, it will give you an edge on your CV when you come to applying for a role. And they're often some of the hardest places to get into for work experience if you're looking at the commercial sector.